people just see you and just have this expectation that you must be feeling frustrated because you're not married. And I'm just like, well, there's so much more to life than that. And not everybody wants to get married. Not anybody wants to have kids when they're not ready.
Right.
Well, not everybody wants to have kids at all. So, but we just assume that, that's the case.
Welcome to the show. I am your host, Anyoh, and I spark the hard conversations that challenge questionable cultural and societal norms that threaten the well-being of the African community. And I also share stories about growing up as Africans in Africa and in the diaspora. I strongly believe that normalizing open discussions and sharing experiences, whether good or bad, will not only make you find your voice, but will broaden your sense of purpose and empower others to do the same. So if you have ever tried challenging certain African cultural and societal doctrines, or if you have ever felt like it is about time that we confronted these issues in our African community and do better as a people, or even if you have always been interested in learning about the experiences of other Africans growing up in Africa and the diaspora, then you are in the right place. Welcome to Living African.
When are you getting married?
When are you having a baby?
Do you want your parents to die before they see their grandchildren?
Your mates are running their own businesses. When will God visit you with blessings?
Your best friend has bought a car, a house. What do you have to show?
You are too handsome or too beautiful to be single.
You should be first in your class like your teammates.
Your mates are married with children, but you seem to only be about your books. Life is not all about school, though.
You need to settle down, though.
Do any of these words sound familiar to you? Truth is that if you grew up in an African household, you most likely must have heard at least one of these words thrown at you at some point. So somehow we have created this social timeline that has to be instituted as a crucial part of being successful as an African. And it feels like a degree, marriage, children, etc., at an appointed time should be our ultimate goal and highest achievement in life. We tend to forget that the essence of purpose and fulfillment, however that may come to us, should be our ultimate goal in life. Today, we will be challenging these superficial ideologies that put so much societal pressure on us Africans. We will defy such a doctrine that has pushed so many Africans to make horrible decisions because they are trying to fit into the status quo and please their loved ones and the community at large. I will be having a somewhat remote fireside chat with two of my very good girlfriends, Dr. Judwin Ndzo and Dr. Clarisse Wuttidma. I've basically known these two phenomenal ladies since childhood, and we have grown together and faced similar academic and societal challenges together. We will be sharing our experiences and outlook on the African timeline, and I really, really look forward to this conversation. Welcome, ladies. I'm so happy to have you guys.
Thank you, Gabby. It's nice. Thanks for having me on the show. I'm an avid listener, and I didn't think I'll appear on your show, but I'm grateful to be here. Ideas, and
Right. I'm super, super happy. And when both of you decided to, say you agreed to come on the show, I was super excited because I know how much support you guys have, given me towards this show, and, to have you guys participate, it meant a lot to me. So I greatly appreciate it. And I so look forward to this conversation. So let's get a brief introduction from each of you so that, people should fully understand where you're coming from and who you actually are. So I'm going to start with you, Clarisse.
Hi, my name is Clarisse Wuttidma. I was born and grew up in Bamenda, Cameroon. I moved to the UK in 2006, right after leaving high school for university. I studied economics and finance at uni, and undergrad level, master's and PhD levels. I'm currently working as a road business consultant, working on major road projects and working on the decarbonization of the UK transport sector. And right after I finished my PhD, my dad went straight on to say, "Oh, congratulations, but we're waiting for the big one." And I was just like, what big one are you talking about? And then he was talking about like getting married and starting a family. But nonetheless, my dad has always encouraged us, especially his girls, to study to the highest level. He always pushed us to study to the highest level. And I always said, education is something that no one can take away from you, and it's something that you have for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
So he's only someone who knew that education was important, but he's like, at the end of the day, you have to get married, you have to start a family, you have to give him grandchildren.
Right.
So
that's nice. Every parent wants that balance. They want their kids to, prevail at each, in every sector, right? Yeah. So what about you, Judwin?
So thank you for having me again, Javi. So I'm Judwin. I'm a pediatric registrar in the UK. So a registrar is just some sort of middle grade kind of doctor, like on your way to becoming a consultant. I grew up in Cameroon, in Douala. I went to PS's Mancon boarding school, and that's where I met Jabi. So I moved to the UK in 2015, yes. So prior to coming to England, so I studied medicine in the University of Buea in Cameroon. I worked in Buea for a bit and then worked with Doctors Without Borders. It's a humanitarian organization in Central Africa. Moved to the UK on a Chevening scholarship. It's a scholarship that's given by the United Kingdom government. Did my master's in public health nutrition, started working as a pediatric doctor, got into residency, and that's where I am at the moment. I am a very passionate, visionary person. Like, I like to encourage other people to see beyond the norm, encourage other people to dream beyond the usual. Like, always try to get what you want to. And sometimes people accuse me of being an optimist, which, that's who I am. But the kind of setting in which I grew up, so both my parents were engineers. They were, and my mom especially was the kind of person who always talked to her children and always trying to tell you, you can do whatever you want to, you can be the best version of yourself. And she always said, you have to be better than your parents. I don't always tell people that because I now know that life is not a straight line, but she always said that and spoke about having a vision and always doing your best to get there and, encountering roadblocks. So, that's the sort of person I am. I know that I can do whatever I want to do, always trying to have a plan, always trying to make sure things are, and whatever I'm doing is getting there towards that vision. Yeah.
Awesome. You guys have such ambitious stories and ambition. Like, you guys have so much expertise, and that's just why I love having conversations with you guys, because there's always something to learn at every instance that we talk, and I mean, they say surround yourself with people that, are going towards the same direction, or people that, are higher than you and stuff like that. So I always like having such conversations and just connecting with you guys, at different points, because I feel like I can always learn something from you. And that's, what life is all about, living and learning. So about the African timeline, we can actually all talk for days about several incidents that we have encountered throughout the course of our lives so far. And, can you name a couple of instances that have stuck out so far to you about all the societal pressures and even cultural pressures that have been imposed to you at some point in your life? Clarisse, you can go ahead.
I'd just like to point out, I don't think it's only an African timeline, like getting married and having kids, like after your studies is like a general timeline for all parents. But I feel like there's more pressure with the African parents or the African culture. And a lot of my colleagues that are not African, they kind of just work and some of them get married at 30, 40, and they don't have that much pressure from their parents. But from us, it's different. Like, they expect you to, the moment you're done, you need to have brought someone to get engaged and get married and start giving them grandchildren. An incident like at my graduation, my dad said you're ready for the big one, as I mentioned before, like going back home for holiday or being a bridesmaid at a wedding. Everyone is just like, your next, when is yours coming? When are we coming for your wedding? Or just when I post pictures of my nieces and nephews and my friends' kids, I'm like, oh, we're waiting for you. Stop posting other people's kids' pictures. We're waiting for you. So things like that. And I'm sure it's similar with you as well.
Yeah, I totally agree. I feel like every girl who has literally graduated, it doesn't even matter how old you are, as long as at least you have a certain level of education, it's like that's literally the next. It's like it's literally a timeline. Like, okay, now you're done with this. What next? What next? You know what I mean? And so, I mean, people just don't, I just don't get it, because I mean, everybody's timeline is different in life. Our journeys are different, you know, different things happen at different times. We have classmates or age mates who got married even before they finished their degree. They had kids before they finished their degrees and stuff like that. So that's just something that I can't understand. And I mean, sometimes it can get really annoying, you know, because I personally have experienced that as well. Like sometimes it makes you even feel uncomfortable posting on social media because everybody is just going to ask you questions. I mean, I remember I had an aunt who commented on one of my posts on social media. She was like, just have the kids, I'll take care of them. I'm like,
no, they wouldn't. They wouldn't. You'd be on your
right?
own.
I'm like, but I'm not trying to have kids because I can't take care of them. I mean, I want to have kids at my own time, you know, so it's ridiculous, honestly. So Judwin, what stories do you have?
Yeah, so I think I do agree, like Clarisse has said, that it's not necessarily an African thing, because I think for like some of my white friends, I think there's some, depending on where they're from, like their kind of family background, some families have more expectations than others. But should I just say, I'm in my early 30s, and career-wise, even though I don't see myself like I've gotten to where I want to be, but a lot of people would be like, oh, you're doing really well, you know, in your career and stuff. But obviously there's always that point where people are always very judgmental.
Yeah.
Fortunately, the kind of setting in which I grew up, my parents are not the kind of judgmental people. My dad actually has never told me anything about getting married, but I know he said to my mom. And and I do get where my mom is also very churchy, and I think my dad has made comments about, oh, you guys go to church too much, which is why you're not getting married and stuff. But
That's funny.
An incident I can remember. Like you said, there's several, but a few have stood out to me. So I've had people who tell me, you sound too smart. You're not going to get married because you sound too smart. Or like, you know, I had a friend who came to me and was trying to give me advice, and he was like, you shouldn't buy a house, or you shouldn't buy a car because some reduces chances of getting married, and you shouldn't sound too smart because men don't like women who are too smart. And I said to him, actually, if a guy is that complex, I wouldn't want to be their partner anyway.
Yeah.
You know, because why should we put so much pressure on ourselves? And I'm like, yeah, I would like to get married someday, but I'm not that kind of like putting, like, there's no formula in life. Like you create what works for you, and life is not a straight line. So, and what I always tell people, like, live your life, be very happy, you know, just take advantage of every moment you have, you know. And like Clarisse said, people also sometimes get when I post pictures, I think maybe you're the one who said it, like when I'm very supportive of my friends who are married or my friends who have kids, you know, and people are always like, oh, I'm surprised that you're very supportive of people who are married or have, like, am I supposed to be angry that my friends are upset that my friends are getting married? Like, it's a good thing. I'm very happy for them. Like, why do you have people just see you and just have this expectation that you must be feeling frustrated because you're not married? And I'm just like, well, you know, there's so much more to life than that. And not everybody wants to get married. Not anybody wants to have kids when they're not ready. Right. Not everybody wants to have kids at all. So, but we just assume that, you know, that's the case, you know, so, you know, which is very unfair. There's another incident I remember, like on a class WhatsApp group, where there's this guy who's a bit very argumentative. And one day we're talking about something, one of these WhatsApp chit chats, and he was upset he got upset in the argument, and he was like, oh, by the way, you're not married and you haven't got kids. Like, he used that to sort of insult me. And I was just like, how low can people get?
Right.
How low can people get? Like, you know, anyway, it happened. Like, there's so many stories I can go on and on, but those are a few that stood out, like, you know.
You somehow want to pack the stories and don't think about them, like, you know, just saying buying a house and buying a car. You have an auntie call me to say, oh, now you buy a house, you wouldn't find a man. I'm just like, okay. You know, like, you scare people away and stuff like that. I just feel like if anyone is scared, then that's not for me. That's why I keep saying, if anyone is scared, that person is not for me. It just helps me like filter people. So that's fine.
Right. And you know the irony is that a lot of these people, when they say these things, they don't mean harm per se, and it's usually your loved ones, they don't mean harm. They say it based on their outlook on life, but that kind of careless talk could literally strike certain rods, you know what I mean? And I feel like in our African communities, we are so fond of talking carelessly without meaning it, but not knowing the impact of what we say. You know what I mean? Like, I can give so many instances. Like, you can be going through something even like mental, and you want to confide in someone, or somebody must have hurt you and you want to tell them like, hey, this is how I feel about it. The first thing they'll say like, oh, you like to complain too much. And then they'll be like, okay, so what is it? So it's like they're shutting you out before even asking you. So it's like, okay, what's the point of me even telling you if that's your outlook on me? You know what I mean? So it's like all that careless talk, I feel like that's what's killing us as well. And like you rightfully said, Judwin, like, it's unbelievable. Like you're the second person who has said this on this platform, because like last week or two, I believe, when I was talking to my parents about, the outlook on marriage through the generations. And my dad was saying that in their own generations, the women that were educated, it was so hard for them to have husbands, especially the nurses, and ironically, one of our classmates, actually, who's a nurse in Cameroon, she said that she came and commented and said the same thing, that even till nowadays in Cameroon, or maybe even in other African countries, a lot of men don't want to get married to nurses because they feel like nurses know everything and stuff like that. Like, as in they know the physiology or the anatomy, and I just don't understand, but that's a very weird way to look at things, and I just don't get it, honestly, and we've also painted this picture in our community to make it seem like marriage and children is like the ultimate holy grail, is the holy grail of life, you know what I mean? And it's super weird, because there's so much more to life. And you have some people that are literally, or some girls and boys who are literally being groomed to achieve that marital status, or that status as somebody's mother or somebody's father. But then again, it's like people work their entire lives towards that goal, and then when they hit that goal, they see that it's not what it was to begin with, and then they find themselves stuck in certain situations that, otherwise they're not even supposed to be there. You're fitting into the status quo of, oh, I have to get married, that you just lower your standards and you go with anybody because you want to have that status of being married, and you want to have kids. It's like sometimes you even force yourself to have kids before you get married, or you have kids with the wrong person, and then the child suffers, So, there's a lot of that in our community, even though we don't like talking about it, but that's the whole point of us talking about it today. So, and like I said about the careless talk, I really wonder if people who ask these questions really understand how it impacts others, because sometimes they could be joking, but it's not, you don't know what that person is going through, to say certain things. And so, I think it would be very, very important for us to really shed more light on that, because it really impacts people negatively than not, because people don't just sit and it's some people can choose to not get married, like you said, and others can choose to not have kids. But there are some people who are actually fighting with internal struggles that nobody knows about, and I really want us to, to shed more light on it, because I feel like, if we don't get vulnerable, and if we don't, talk about these things, people will not really understand and mind their business, basically, So do you guys have any experiences of like when, you were really going through something, and then like somebody just said something very insensitive that, they didn't really know about, what you were going through, not necessarily even you, but just even somebody, that, their story, and then like you see how another person in the African community really treats them, or even say stuff that really hurts them, but they just don't know the impact that, the impact of their words on that person. So Clarisse, you want to start?
Yeah, I'll start on that. Just like Judwin said, someone coming to me saying, oh, you're too smart and you're pushing men away, you're kind of making men run away from you and stuff like that. I've heard that said to me a couple of times, and you have friends be like, oh, you've been here for too long. Why can't you find anyone? Are you being choosy? Are you being too picky on the men that come? But I'm honestly grateful, because when I had that pressure, like 4 or 5 years ago, I was under so much pressure, and I don't know if it's a good thing to say, but thank God I didn't go for that. Like I kind of sat down one day, I said, I can't let myself go under this much pressure, because in the end I would suffer. I'll either have a child that, you know, I'm not with the father, or it wouldn't work out and it would be on me, I wouldn't be living with my dad or my parents to see what's going on with me. So in a way, I'm grateful that I didn't get into that pressure. And yes, it did bother me. I wouldn't say it didn't bother me, but over time, it's kind of faded off. I'm just living life as it comes and just enjoying what I have, going further with my career or whatever God blesses me with. I'm just being grateful with that.
Yeah, that's very true. That's very true. And I totally agree, you know, with what you said. Judwin, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, so I completely agree, Clarisse. Those are very interesting points you've raised. And the thing is, I mean, I know, Jabi, you've said a lot of people are saying, come to you and are saying things out of concern, but our community is also a very chit-chatty community because people like gossip. Let's be clear, like people like to gossip and to talk. And unfortunately, people are not always very well-meaning when they talk about other people.
Yeah.
People just want juicy stories and something juicy to talk about. And what I tell people is, it's in the end, it's somebody's life. Like, I give an example. So I have a friend who is a breastfeeding enthusiast, and she goes about talking about breastfeeding to everyone. And I know another friend who is HIV positive, so she doesn't breastfeed. And the other friend goes about pestering everybody and comes to this other friend and is pestering and pestering and pestering. Why aren't you breastfeeding? You have to breastfeed. You have to breastfeed. And you know, it got to the point where I know, you know, the other lady was feeling very uncomfortable. And I said to the other friend, like, it wasn't a single occurrence, like it was a recurring kind of thing. And I said to her, breastfeeding is a very good thing, but you need to know how you talk to people about it. In the end, it's their lives, it's their babies, it's very important, and you've given them the knowledge, but you don't know people's personal circumstances. You don't know if they have an infection that prevents them breastfeeding. HIV is not the only thing that can prevent a mom from breastfeeding. They could be taking drugs as well that are toxic to the baby, you know, and lots of other things. So, and I said to her, you can't go about pestering people. They have their own story, and you making it, and they don't necessarily want to talk to you about it. But I find that sometimes we need to learn to mind our business and know when to talk and know when not to talk, because when you talk about things, you always have to think, how are my words going to, do I have to say this? How are my words going to impact this person, you know, before you even say something? Because words are something that once given, you cannot take back.
That's very true. I totally agree with both of you. You know, like, we as a community, we really have to watch what we say. And it's that really bothers me as well, because like I said, a lot of people in our community, they don't really take words seriously when they're dishing it out. You know what I mean? And they don't apologize for it when they know that they're, you know, like, oops, what I said. They'll be like, I was just playing. You're taking things too seriously. You know what I mean? I just feel like we should stop the whole habit of like just throwing out words out there, because like words will literally kill people more than even like a punch or so. You know what I mean? Like, I'll never forget what you told me, because what you told me made me feel some kind of way that I will not forget. You know, you can punch me and I'll probably forget that you punched me, but what you say to me, it's like it's planted in my mind, you know? So it's something that we really, really have to be mindful of. I mean, pressure on getting married. Like, you don't know what that person has gone through. You don't know what the traumas, the emotional traumas that person had is still trying to overcome before even moving forward. People heal differently. People move at different rates. You're talking about people having kids here and there. You don't know if that person is struggling to have a child. You don't know the pressures, the emotional, psychological, and mental issues that person is going on at that same moment. And you're just, all what you're doing is adding more to it, you know? So, I mean, just mind your business. That's what I have to say to everyone in the African community. Like, if someone brings a child, hallelujah. If they don't, hey, it's none of your business. You know, like, you don't know what they're going through. You don't know the choices, what has influenced the choices that they're making. You know what I mean? I can't say it any other different way. We need to learn how to mind our business and stop being chit-chatty. You know, like, people have different journeys. People have different timelines. Everybody does not have to have the same timeline, and we have to learn how to accept each other just the way that we are. You know, I'm not meant to be the same as you, Judwin. I'm not meant to be the same as you, Clarisse, and neither are you. You know, so we should just enjoy our journey and celebrate each other with love that we deserve, So, I mean, I know we've spoken a lot about the whole pressures to get married and to settle and stuff like that in the perspective of the woman, but I feel like men as well, it's like when you see a man trying to get married, everybody's like, oh, does he have a job? How is he going to provide for the family? Does he have a car? Does he have, like, it's all about, the Bible says a man is a provider, but it's all about, measuring the man's readiness based on what he has and his achievements, before you can tell if he will be a strong man in his marriage, or if a man is getting married to a woman who's more successful than him, is looked upon as, oh, he's a weak man or something like that, which is so primitive. It's a primitive way of looking at things. Also, this kind of, builds up to the fact that marriage and having kids are like the ultimate goal, because, hey, a man's worth, I guess, in a marriage is how much he has to raise his family, basically. So what do you guys think about the whole ideology of, basically our community and our culture and our society grooming us, men and women, ultimately for marriage? Because it's like, I feel like once you have a degree, they're like, what next? And then when you're married, of course, in 9 months time, you know what I mean? And then after 9 months, you have the child and, maybe you have 1 or 2 children or whatever, the question stops. So it's like, okay, I guess is that the ultimate goal in life, to get married and have kids, like, what about my achievements? What about my happiness? What about other things? You know what I mean? So like, what do you guys think about that whole ideology?
So, so unfortunately, we have a lot of that in our society. And I think like in Africa, abroad, we have so many opportunities, like career-wise and whatnot. Back home in Cameroon and in many African countries where unemployment rate is so high, marriage is literally seen sometimes as a means of subsistence, like as okay. Some girls sometimes would say, oh yeah, I don't know why my life is so bad. I haven't got neither a job or a husband. Like how can you put both together? These are not interchangeable, But unfortunately, people see a husband as a substitute for a career or a job if you haven't got one. So I'll talk about, the ladies' side of things first. So the one thing I tell people, so we grow up being made to think that, and with all the novellas and the movies we watch and the Mills and Booms and everything, we think that, oh, you're going to meet some prince charming and you're going to live happily ever after. But actually, like that's not how life really works out, is it?
Yeah.
I tell people that you and you alone are responsible for your happiness. Like marriage is a good thing, it's a happy thing, but marriage will not make a sad or angry person better.
Yes.
You have to, being happy is it's something that you how do I say it?
It's from within.
Decision, it's a decision. You decide to be a happy person, and whether single or married, if you don't want to be happy, you're going to find fault with everything and you're always going to be angry. So I think people need to understand, ourselves, sometimes we put so much pressure on ourselves, and we need to understand that marriage or anything else only gives more meaning to life. It doesn't make you like completely transform you into something that you dream to be. Whatever you do, it comes from within. So we have to start to try to understand that. The other thing, like I said earlier, is that life is not a straight line. When I was in second or third year of medical school, we always used to say, by fifth year, we're all going to get engaged. By sixth year, we'll be married. And when we leave school, we'll have kids and then get into residency. But,
wow.
We had all these
life planned.
Yeah. Life doesn't always go that way, and sometimes we have kids as well who a kid is doing all A grade, the other one is not, and you compare both and you get upset. Life is not a straight line. You can leave school and take 1 year out of school, just rest, just doing nothing, or maybe volunteering somewhere, not chasing your career. It doesn't always have to be that excessive demand on yourself, trying to, figure out the next step, always, which is good. It's good to I always tell people, have a vision, and however you get to achieve your vision, there's so many pathways towards achieving that vision. And I believe that God created us on earth with a purpose, and you have to find your purpose. And marriage is a good thing.
Yeah.
And I don't, I tell people, if you want to be a housewife, and that's a very difficult thing to
Very
be.
difficult, yeah.
It's a choice. As long as everything you do, just do it well. But and your purpose may be raising children, to become a president. That could be your purpose and vision in life. But in my life, the way I always say, or the way I see things, there are things that you can influence, and there are other things that you cannot influence.
Right.
And if I cannot, things that I cannot influence are things that rely on somebody else, like getting married, for example. You can date somebody, but you can't tell what if you guys have a similar mindset, if the person is serious or not. I can't influence somebody else, but I can do my best to make a relationship work. But I can influence my career choices, or how hard I work at my job. Those are things I can influence. And flipping the coin, looking at the male side, I don't think it's fair that we have so many expectations of men, like they have to own a car, they have to be this before they get married. And what about women too? Which is why we let women go into marriage thinking they're going to get it. That's a job. No, it's not a job. And there's so much pressure on men to provide financially for the home, and women, even when they are having an income, they see this money as their money rather than money for the home, which is not fair. Like, I think, and even when people get married, marriage should be collaborative effort and work together towards achieving a good outcome.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
I'll let Clarisse carry on.
Thank you so much. Clarisse, what do you have to add?
Judwin has basically covered most of what I wanted to say, and it's just basically to add that marriage I don't see it as the greatest or the ultimate achievement, especially for an African woman there, and it kind of undermines other things that people achieve, because you feel like you are not married, people feel like you haven't done anything in life. Like, people are doing really good with their careers, with life in general, just basically being happy, just staying alive and just influencing other people. But because you're not married, people think, oh, you've not done anything, you're still waiting for that big thing to happen. And on the men's side, men kind of also go through a lot of pressure, but it's just like, it's easier for women to talk about things like that, but men kind of don't talk about it. And most of them that I've come across just go silent. And you'd say, okay, man having a car and a house and having a job, you think that's like a qualification to get married. But what if that's something they have for now, and what happens tomorrow? God forbid they lose the job, or something happens and he's not able to provide as he did. What happens then? So we can't use that as a qualification to say, oh, the man is ready to get married. I guess it's just your mindset. Are you ready to do that? Like, familiar with everything else? Yes, it would be good to have a job and all of that, to be able to provide for your family, a comfortable life for your family. But it shouldn't be seen as a qualification for a man to be ready to get married.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, there should be no qualification. You know what I mean? Because different factors influence different decisions. You know what I mean? Like, there should be no standard in who to choose to get married, or when to get married, or how to get married. And I feel like all these things, I feel like all these ideologies are really exacerbated in our African communities because of the whole idea or the whole thing about reputation or comparison. Like, you have, especially your parents' generation, they're like, oh yeah, my friend's daughter got married and they're already having kids. When are you gonna have yours? Or they had a white wedding. Like, I also have to have you guys have to have a white wedding. I'm like, no, okay, if you want to have a white wedding, just go have your renewal, your vow renewal. You know what I mean? Like, so it's all these things about comparing one another. It's like, we're so much into each other's business, and social media is not even helping it, that we're so much into, like, we have each other's business shoved in our faces, that we always have to meet up. Like, we always want to try to meet up to those standards. Like, oh, this person is doing this, so I have to do this. Like, oh, I have to do more, and I have to do more. So it's like the pressure on certain people who are gullible, who are easily influenced, it's like when they see other people doing certain things, they don't even know, like whatever you see, especially on social media, is not all there is to the story. It's just what people want you to see, so you see all these things, and then you have that pressure, like, oh my goodness, my friends are getting married, I have to get married. My friends are having kids, I have to have kids. So it kind of, all those things also contribute towards influencing that timeline. Like everybody wants to meet up that time, like, oh my God, I'm getting old, or I haven't found someone yet, things like that. And at the same time, on the other hand, it even makes you, like I had mentioned earlier, and I believe like Clarisse mentioned, it's like it makes you uncomfortable even posting your own things on there, because people will start comparing you to that situation that you're posting. Like you post like your niece or nephew, and they're like, oh yeah, when are you having your own? Your sister has her own. I want to see you post your own on social media. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
All these things are just ridiculous to me, and I feel like it's really damaging our community. The whole reputation thing and comparison. We end up being with the wrong people because they're from a certain reputable family. We end up making the wrong choices because we're trying to please our parents and our loved ones. And I just want to get you guys' opinion on, the need for our community to be more open-minded, the need for us to see things differently.
Yeah. So I think, like, as you've rightly said, it's obviously, like we've said, like we've all agreed here, like, like when you keep pestering people, what do you want to achieve? So let's ask you have to ask yourself, what do you want to achieve? I think we have to acknowledge that when we end up pestering people and being in their business, we don't know their struggles. And if they're really struggling over something, they just end up being frustrated. My mom is not one to pester me too much about getting married, but every now and then she'll call me and be like, oh, don't you have good news for me? And I'm like, okay. and you said, your auntie said, oh, we're going to come and help you. No one's going to come and help you. Like, if you're not in a good place to have a child, don't have a child, because it's going to be on you. Most of our parents these days are working. They wouldn't be able to come and stay here and if you live abroad, they wouldn't come. Even if you live away from them, come and stay with you for a year to help you look after the kids. It's going to be on you. So have your kid because you're ready to have your kid. When we end up putting so many expectations on ourselves and on other people, all we do is create this environment where people are stressed up, people are afraid to talk. I have so many good ideas about relationships and marriage, but I don't post things on relationships and marriage because people, in my mind, whether it's true or not, but I just feel like people will be very judgmental. People will be like, you're not married, why are you saying this?
Who are you to say that, right?
Exactly. Who are you to say that? But at least I'm a pediatrician, so I can say things about children and people will listen. Right. And that's not very fair. You don't have to be a married person to be able to have good ideas,
or even give your opinion.
Or give your opinion on things. You don't have to be. So we just create that kind of environment where we push people away. People shy away from speaking up, and even people. I mean, I know you've spoken a lot about divorce in your previous podcast, but also having these expectations and timelines, it makes people stuck in abusive relationships and marriages just because they want to either get married or they want to stay married. Like, I know a few of my friends who've had bad marriages, when they talk to you, you realize that the signs of this abusive or bad person were there before they got married, but for some reason, they still went ahead and got married. And that's one of the consequences of us having so much pressure on ourselves. And I always tell my parents, so I always say, look, if whoever I get married to, I'm going to live with them. Yes, you can accuse me of being a picky person, but there's nothing wrong with being choosy or picky. Maybe that's how you see it, or maybe I have my own way of looking at things. But there's nothing wrong with that. But in the end, whoever you get married to, you're going to be stuck with that person. You're going to stay with that person. No one else will. Right. So you don't want to just be with any kind of person just because it's going to make everyone happy. No, in the end, it's yours. And if you have to follow every single thing that people say, you're going to realize that you can't live your life. They're going to be, when are you having your degree? When are you getting married? When are you going to have kids? Even before you get married, why aren't you having such a wedding? And we forget that we as Africans, we've so much indoctrinated ourselves into the Western culture that, and then now we're starting to go back to African culture, and then we mix both, and then we end up having being very confused.
Right,
I
right,
say
right.
you have a fancy proposal, and then you have a doctor, and then you have a traditional wedding, and then a civil wedding, and then a white wedding, and then a baby shower, and then both house. You just end up being these confused people
Confused,
who spend
yeah.
so much money
Yeah,
doing things
that's
that
very true.
will not really improve anyone's life, but temporary things. So I think it's really important that we have to learn to be nice people. Like we accuse live in England, we tend to accuse British people of being cautious with their words. Sometimes that's the right way to be. We have to have a mix. Like you shouldn't just spurt things out to people. Sometimes we have to learn to mind our business, and we have to know how to choose our words and how to say things nicely to people. And I'm also guilty of it, but it's something that I'm also learning and trying to get better at.
Right. I mean, I totally agree as usual. Because I mean, we grew up in that culture, so we still find ourselves at certain times when we tend to, speak carelessly, even without knowing it. So I mean, just knowing that that is an issue is the first step to change, is the first step to working towards that change, which I'm very glad that we are doing. We realize that, it's, certain things can be taken not as you intended. And so that's why it's very important to choose your words, especially when it has to do with sensitive and personal issues as such. So, Clarisse, what about you? What do you have to say about that?
Just to add to what Judwin said, I think the mentality is actually changing with a lot of, especially our friends and our peers getting married and basically divorcing in 1 or 2 years. And slowly the conversation has changed from when I get married, that's in my family, to we just want you to be happy.
Right.
Don't rush, the right time is coming, and just being encouraging and stuff. So I would say slowly it's changing, but there's still that pressure there, because even if the words that we said before still hurt sometimes, like you say, what's said already cannot be taken back. So you still feel like in the back of your head, is that still what the thing is? It just a sugar coating and stuff? But I guess over time, with such conversations, that will change, hopefully. And just to add that, trust your process, celebrate every achievement, how small. It mustn't be about getting married or having kids. Could be a job or buying a house or a car, anything. Just celebrate every achievement in your life and celebrate others too. And also sometimes just stay away from the noise and the pressure, because it gets to you, and sometimes you act out of that pressure without knowing it. Like you just do something to get out of it. So you just basically stay out of it and try to focus on our dreams.
Right. Yeah. That's very true. I mean, I feel like, hopefully people get a message from this conversation that we're having today, because I mean, we have probably touched on like just very, very few points, but people who have gone through what we are talking about, and we have also gone through, will definitely relate to what we're saying. And even people who have made others go through that, who will relate to what we're saying. Hopefully we can have more conversations as such, where we will really go deeper into personal examples. And I'm really looking forward to that, because I definitely have a couple of personal examples which I will share in due time. But as we slowly introduce this topic to especially our African people, I feel like this is a conversation that needs to be had amongst circles in general. So now, I mean, I just want to thank you guys, first of all, for, sharing your own insight and sharing your own perspective on this. And I hope that we don't really end with this conversation here. Now that we have spoken about all of these things, like if I had to ask, like, what last word will you guys say to other people who have been through things like this, been through such experiences, such societal pressures and stuff like that? What will that be?
So the one thing I always tell people is life is short. Live life, be happy, make the most out of it, and take things one step at a time, because life is not a straight line. Thank you.
Yeah, that's powerful. Thank you. What about you, Clarisse?
I just say live your life, not someone else's opinion about your life.
Whoa.
And also learn from your mistakes and the mistakes of others.
Wow. That's powerful as well. I mean, my own take on it as well is that, and I think I read it somewhere on social media, and I could really relate to that. And it was saying that as this, I think it was Angelique Kojo, actually. I think it was an interview I saw her watching, and she said, you owe your happiness to yourself. You owe yourself happiness, basically. As long as you were, not hurting anybody, like live your life as long as you're not in the way of somebody's progress or you're not hurting anybody, because no matter what you say or no matter what you do, people will still talk. People will still do what they want, so why don't you just do what you want? As long as you're not hurting anybody, live your life, So that is really what I am trying to do on a daily basis, because I feel like I have so much potential. And talking about purpose, as Judwin had mentioned, like we're called here to pursue our purpose and also to have that fulfillment in life. And I feel like life is pointless if you don't pursue your purpose and also pursue your happiness, and have fulfillment. If you don't feel fulfilled, I feel like life is useless. And that fulfillment comes with happiness as well. So there are certain things that I feel like I could do, but I tend to think like, oh my goodness, what will other people think? Or what will, how will I look in front of people and stuff like that? And it boils down to that cultural ideology that we grew up with reputation, or, how people look at you. You always want to look perfect in front of everybody. You don't want to show your vulnerable side or your issues that you have behind the scenes. So that's really what I'm really learning, how to come out of my shell and just live an authentic life filled with fulfillment. And people will always talk anyways. So even if you don't want to get married now, you don't choose to get married. I know people that don't want to get married. That is totally fine. People will talk. Even if you got married at 20 years, people would have still said you were too young. Even if you got married at 25 years and divorced at 27, people would have still talked like, oh, I knew it was going to happen. So it's like, you do your damn, you don't do your damn. Just go ahead and live your life and everybody else will be okay. That's my final say on that. So I really, really want to thank you guys so much for this, to me, brief conversation, because I can sit here all night talking to you guys, but I really appreciate your presence. I appreciate everything that you have said. And I hope that, the conversation does not end here, as I always say. I hope that we can take these conversations to our various circles, as listeners, and, spark these conversations amongst our families, our friends, and, learn from one another, and always make sure that we are kind to one another as well. So I'll see you guys in the next episode. Bye.
Bye.
That's it for today. Thank you for listening to our show. If you want to participate in the show or find out more helpful resources, then visit www.livingafricanpodcast.com for more information, or email us at hello@livingafricanpodcast.com. Also, don't forget to connect with us on all social media platforms at Living African Podcast. You can also connect with Anyoh directly on Facebook or Instagram at Anyoh Farmbard. Thanks again for listening, and let's not forget to be more understanding and nicer to one another.